Welcome back to Control, episode... Yeah, I killed the boss. Let's talk about the room. So this is a really nice room. I'm not actually sure why it exists in terms of, why they'd build it in-game. But it's beautiful. It's a wonderful room. And let's study it. Let's cherish it. Why not? So it's got a lot of cathedral vibes, and there's a lot going on here that's worth studying in detail. Obviously, ritual department having cathedral vibes makes perfect sense. But look at this room in specific. There are a few things that really stand out. The first is this really obvious bright yellow target that's very cathedral-ish. You've got, one central repository for where the guy in charge stands as he talks at you. That's a really great way to tell us which way is forward, because if we look up here, if we were to go backwards, we would see this equally beautiful, but definitely not yellow, light source. So we can tell which way is forward by simply looking at the light. We do have some things off to the sides. Each of these yellow lights is supposed to indicate, a direction forward. We also have these wonderful side elements. These lights are fantastic at illuminating these trees, and their brightness really allows this to have a really... I don't want to keep saying cathedral-ish. Just a really beautiful effect. These pillars are staggered. As you can see, they've got several different elements to them, which allows the lights to really brighten them up in a way that is super gothic, without actually needing a lot of that gothic complexity. And here by gothic, I'm talking about, the complex structures that you would see from the Gothic era or with the Gothic style, not people with eyeshadow. Or people from, where was it? Germany? I don't know. Either way, these are not the only thing in the room, though. You have a whole second floor up above. Now, if the second floor was separated by only a narrow pillar of white like this, it wouldn't be very impressive. But instead, we've got these golden art pieces and this overflowing greenery, both of which really shout that this is like a really interesting, probably very old place, right? This is the sort of thing you'd see about in games about, ruins of an ancient godlike creature that came down and harvested unicorns or whatever. It's a really great way to set this up as being just an almost religious experience, and that's the whole point of the ritual research division, right? I really like how they have these bright elements off to the sides, but they leave the roof. It's quite tall, but it's dark. I think that really works for this kind of exploration. If they had made the roof bright, it might appear too cheerful and open. In order to give it that sort of slightly sinister vibe, all the lights are off to the side. I think it works great. I think that this room, I give it an A+. I love it. It's awesome! Obviously, the far sides have more golden art, and I think that works great for darkening up the walls so that you don't get distracted by them and you only see the exits. It takes a lot of really interesting, it takes a lot of cleverness to build a room that is this large, but keeps you so laser focused on the exits. It is just a wonderful approach, and sometimes I honestly wonder how they even got this. How did they do this? Like, this isn't something that exists. I don't think they stole it from an existing building. I mean, obviously pieces of it do, but this isn't a copy. This is something they came up with on their own, and they're just game devs. They're not paid architects. Maybe they are. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe the Control devs are actually paid architects. So now we're going to move into a less impressive, but still quite clever section of the game, Protective Studies. So this room is the exact opposite. It has no vertical variation, no multiple levels, no lights off to the side. It's just got these two super bright spotlights coming down into the middle of the room, and the outer edges are all dark, because that's what they wanted this room. They wanted this room to feel a lot less they wanted you to focus on how do I say it? It's a very different flow vibe comparing a room where you're being guided through to a primary set of exits versus a room like this where there's a bunch of side areas for you to explore. The way that you do it is exactly the opposite, and funnily enough, the way that you do it involves putting the light where you don't want the player to go. I'm going to have to talk about that later. I'm sure there are some better rooms for it, and this is not a great room to describe it. Here you can see more of these these hypercube shadows. We're going to have an annoying puzzle with them later, which I won't force you to watch me do, unless it happens to be like in the middle of the game, like minute 3 or something.
Altered item number 52 AE.
Not a particular fan of that particular duck.
I will begin by introducing to the item.
It's a side quest that's a little bit annoying. I am a fan of this hallway, though. Don't you love how this looks?
This way to the lab? Okay. You must like these HRAs. Sounds like Darling built them. And most of the things around here. If Marshall can't help us with Dylan, he's our next best bet.
You done yet?
Assuming he's not dead. Or taken over by the hiss.
Oh, you're done. Okay. So I like this hallway. I really love how they've taped over it with these, black plastic trash bag sort of approach, and they use caution tape. It just is a really good way to build this kind of wall, and it's super cheap. It is literally just a black trash bag mesh in front of a normal mesh, and over here where we've got them half, I would bet you like 95% chance that is the same exact mesh as this, just pushed up where we can't see it. It's really cheap and it's really wonderful. It's great. I love it. Obviously, I'm a big sucker for spilled paper, but if you're spilling paper, you have to make sure that you're spilling it on a dark floor, because if you're spilling white paper on a white floor, it doesn't pop. That's why this is an excellent choice of flooring here, and I also really like the rather subtle way that they do the ceiling, where it's got a vertical rise even in a hallway like this. Oh, and if you're wondering, these rooms are full of crash test dummies. Told you we'd see more of them. Alright, so here we have another room. This room is identical to the first room in this place. See the lights here? But the lights are off. And that's why I really like their setup here. These rooms are not built to be impressive on their own, but they're built to be impressive as a pair, where one of the rooms is opposed to the other by being completely different in terms of how it's lit and how it's populated. I think it was a really fun choice, and I like it. I like how they did it. Back here we've got a machine room. And I love these machines. So when you're trying to figure out what kind of machines to build, like how do you make your machines look interesting, you can always take inspiration from things that aren't the exact type of machine that you're making. In this case, they took inspiration from like a V12 car engine. These are power conduits, obviously, but that is very, very clearly a car engine. I think it looks amazing. I think it was a brilliant idea. I'm actually surprised that it's so hidden away. If I had made that, I'd be putting it front and center. I'd be like hanging it upside down from the ceiling and making the player look at it. Over on this side, we've got a really complex set of machines. I think someone was showing off, putting together, like, oh, we have all these machine parts. Let's just put them all together. If we go back here, we're going to hear a noise. Oh, maybe we already heard it. Okay, never mind. There it was. Hear that little growl? So there's something going on back here, but we don't know what it is yet. Now, on to the main show. This is a really fantastic setup. The way that they have the only light in the room shining down directly on the only computer in the room with, the decorative wall. This is like a 1950s almost style of sci-fi, where you've got that really, really pretentious minimalist lighting setup. It's wonderful. I love it. Back here we've got more loot. Do we have any loot over here? I don't think so. No, that's it. One of the things I'm not too fond of is that these are, like... These are not boxes I associate with science labs. They're boxes I associate with bands. I expect to find, like, C-stands and electrical cabling and keyboards inside these boxes. Well. Here you can see that we're supposed to match the code. They're trying to teach us how to use these, and the basic idea is that when you hit a direction, those pieces will change. It's pretty easy, but it doesn't come up very often. It's only like in 2 or 3 puzzles, and one of them is really dumb. However, one of them is here. So, I am going to talk about this room, and I have to do it before I try and start the puzzle. Because once you try and start the puzzle, you're not allowed to talk anymore. The lady who does the puzzle for you talks constantly, and you're not allowed to even think. So you're not gonna see that. Instead, we're gonna talk about this room because I think the room is brilliant. You can see it's got this central light that shines all the way across. That's a really great way to focus us on this target object. And once again, this object is not huge. It's not like the size of a house. But because it's so centralized, it really works. It's the focal point of the light. It's got these wonderful cables, and the cables don't come from nowhere. They cross the entire light surface. This is a really brilliant way to design the room. I'm super impressed. The downside of this particular room is that it looks like shit from every other angle. It only looks good from this entrance. Oh well, that's the only place it had to look good from. Lights off to the side to make sure that the walls don't feel strangely dark, but they also aren't bright enough. They're kind of hidden away so that it doesn't distract from this wonderful light here. Great choice. Great room design. Now it's time to do the puzzle, so I'll see you next episode because you don't want to see that.